All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us here at the main stage for the Immersive Gamification and Armed Conflict session. So we'll gently get started. All right, so we'd like to give you a quick glimpse first into what we have been working on inside the ICRC virtual reality team.
For over 160 years, the International Committee of the Red Cross has worked to protect lives and dignity in the midst of armed conflicts. Neutral, impartial, independent, our humanity guides us to train better, to tell stories that matter, to bring people closer to our work. We recreate real-world humanitarian scenarios. We develop gamified simulations for learning by doing. We design intelligent tools that adapt to human response. We build interactive stories where every decision matters. We produce immersive films that let you experience life in the field. Every experience we create brings humanity closer.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Kristina Almonte. I am a virtual reality project coordinator at the International Committee of the Red Cross, or simply the ICRC, and I'm going to be moderating today's discussion. So we're here to explore how immersive technologies and games intersect with conflict, how conflict is portrayed, how people learn about it, and how behaviors can shift in virtual environments. Now, here's how we'll run the session. We'll start with the introductions, then we'll move into a moderated discussion, followed by a forward-looking response from our speakers, and then we open the floor to audience Q&A. So think of this just as a conversation across worlds. We have humanitarians, we have tech experts, we have gamers as well. And with that, let's meet our panel. So today we are joined by Jérémie OBERSON, who is leading the ICRC's technical transformation, exploring how tech supports humanitarian work. We also have BECKER, Senior Vice President of Video Games Europe, representing a major coalition shaping video games public voice. And of course, we are joined by Elena MILCENCO, who is our military and armed groups thematic advisor with hands-on experience on engaging with armed groups on the international humanitarian law, or the laws of war. So unfortunately, Hendrik Lesser isn't able to join us today, but nevertheless, thank you all for being here. All right, so let's begin with Jérémie. Now, Jérémie, let's start with a question maybe most of the people in the room are wondering. Why is the ICRC, a humanitarian organization, is focusing on tech? Why are we here in an expo with gaming and XR industry?
Sure, Kristina, thanks for the question. So maybe first, we realize that not everyone is always aware of what is the International Committee of the Red Cross. We are 162 years old. We were the first Red Cross that were created back then. What happened is one of our founders, Henri Dunant, was going through Italy and he come across a battlefield where a lot of soldiers were wounded, basically lying on the floor, and nobody was taking care of him. He was, he was really upset and could not leave that situation to happen. So he actually went to the nearby village, got the villager, and tried to get those people into church, into places to actually help them and to try to alleviate the pain. So when he came back from that voyage, he basically had the idea with others to create that organization that will actually look at the people impacted by armed conflict, and that's how the ICRC started. The idea of the ICRC was that every country should have a Red Cross or a Red Crescent to help the population in time of peace, but in particular to prepare in time of war. And now, to this day, we are 191 national society in the world that, in time of peace, especially in Europe right now, they help, collecting blood, helping with closer nation, linguistic courses, and of course, in places where there is armed conflict, they actually help the impacted population. So that was just a little explanation because we realize not everyone. Most of the people know our logo because of our emblem, because of the Land Cruiser that you see everywhere, especially lately on TV. But sometimes they don't understand the difference. So when it comes to your question, we believe that to raise awareness in various parts of the population, from academic, the new student, the new generation that will build those experiences, and that are already building those experiences you see here, bringing awareness, make them understand of the impact of violence is very important, but we need also to do it in the way that right now they use to entertain themselves, to educate themselves. So that's why we believe that type of medium, especially for new generation, is important, but not only. We also work, and Elena, my colleague, will talk in detail more about that, with, for example, armed forces, and again, to raise awareness, to educate, to train them. Those new medium allow us to go at a deeper level in the brain, where your lower consciousness doesn't really know it's not real. And that's where a lot of our emotions are hooked to. So we believe it can help us to increase our impact. So yeah, work with academic, lawmaker as well. We are very present in the UN and in various forums, and sometimes showing them visually what we have to, not to offer, but what we do, and how we try to help with the various national society. We believe it's the right medium to interact.
Okay, so Jérémie, you mentioned that we use these immersive technology to engage with different audiences, to amplify our impact as well with our messaging. But can you dig a bit deeper into the strategy of the ICRC in terms of tech? Like, how do we choose which techs to invest in, or which are just the trends?
So what we are looking at is something that can not replace what we are doing, but often complement and increase the impact. And also, we live in a world of scrolling, and you have to have this constant shot of dopamine in your brain to stay interested. I know I'm 42, but I'm still looking at Instagram Reel while I wait for the plane, and that dopamine, and we realize that we can, of course, we still combine, traditional presentation and panel, but we believe that this dopamine is needed now to capture the attention. So we are looking at technology that add value, not simply for the sake of using technology and having cool stuff and cool toys, but to have something that actually will last a bit longer. If today you visit us in our the booth we have in the Dome, we see people in a couple of minutes, we believe, and we have some proof of that it leaves a lasting impact than just, unfortunately, giving a leaflet with terrible picture. I think we have developed this kind of human ad block for suffering, which is sad and potentially related to that dopamine that I was talking about. So having those type of technology allow us to actually go deeper. The people, they look at leaflet, they saw thousands of it, and it doesn't really work that well anymore. But when we put a VR headset, when we put them in a virtual dome, where we make them interact with Omar, our negotiator, that we use to train people that will go to the front line, leveraging on artificial intelligence in the back, we realize that it leaves a lasting effect that we hope that they may take back home and teach their kids, or the lawmaker will take it back to their own country and try to influence the law around it. AI is kind of the wild west right now. The ICRC has published a AI policy to try to show the way to people. But so simply saying technology is bad, we can do nefarious stuff with technology. Of course you can, and I think we'll talk about that a bit. But we believe that you can actually use technology for good to get people to act more and to be more connected with what's happening in the world.
I really like what you said, that we can use technology for good, because it's a good segue to Anne, who is working right at the crossroads of gaming culture, public perception, and policy. Now, Anne, can you tell us about the work of the Global Video Games Coalition? What is your mission and the type of work that you're doing?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having invited me as Video Games Europe, but I'm also here today in my role as co-chair of the Global Video Game Coalition. So before I start, I'll just give ask everybody to go and see stand number 219 and visit the dome of the ICRC. And I think there you will give a first-hand experience of the quite mind-blowing work that you guys have been doing. So that was a little bit promotion for the ICRC. So GVDC is based in Geneva, just like you. And it was set up by the regional trade bodies representing the video game sector from the US, from Canada, from Australia, New Zealand, from South Korea, and Europe, Video Games Europe. So we have our lead spokesperson in Geneva, Tatiana Saxe, but she was unable to come today, so that's why you have to do with me as the stand-in. But we're there, and we were established a couple of years ago in order to have a dialogue with public health professionals, mainly, and policymakers about the mental, physical, and social benefits of video game play, and also the industry's long-standing commitment to responsible gameplay. So we have seen an increasing interest from various international institutions, organizations to collaborate with the GVDC since its start, and currently we are running a collaboration with the UNICEF Game Changers Coalition, which is about getting young girls into STEM. So that is a really important global project spanning globally across many countries, and supporting young girls in getting STEM competences into these young girls via video game coding curricula. So that's one thing we're doing in Geneva. Another thing is that we are having a dialogue also with the WHO. The WHO is proposing a video gaming task force to also look at, they're doing research and literature review of the impact of video games on public health, and also to look at the benefits of public health, in particular, its connection with social connection. Because WHO, they have identified also as many that loneliness is a big issue. People die from loneliness. And I think during the COVID lockdown, many saw that video games were actually a means to connect. People played together. We also supported the WHO in getting public health messages through the video game community, such as stay at home, wash your hands, etc., so on and so forth. So that's a little bit the work we are now doing. We're a new coalition, and we were delighted to get an invitation to visit the work that you're doing in Geneva. So that's a little bit about us.
No, thank you, Anne, for being here, and thanks as well for promoting our stands at the Expo Hall. You mentioned that you also deal with policymakers, right? So I imagine Jérémie can also relate to this question, but what is the common misconception that non-tech people have about immersive technology and games? Let's say in Jérémie's perspective, how do you usually engage with your leadership management when you want to push for immersive tech to be adopted in the ICRC? And for Anne, how do you usually do it when you deal with policymakers?
I think sometimes tech, and especially if we talk of VR, XR, and AI, can sometimes come across as a gimmick, as something cool but nice to have that we don't necessarily need. And honestly, I have so in the way we use to train our own delegate that will go to the field. We do traditional role play, PowerPoint presentation, but we found that by leveraging on what video game allow to do when it comes to the emotional connection. Of course, we will never be able to prepare someone to what they're going to see, and I think you're all watching the news. There is nothing that can prepare you to that fully. But by having those virtual environment, and I invite you again to the booth where we have a kind of like an escape experience where you have to get out of the war zone, and we facilitate that by adding a bit of stress, crouch, run and ramp. They get their emotional higher. We even had tests where the pulse rate go higher. So of course, it's not the same as the reality, but at least we can prepare them to that rush of stress where they have to conduct specific activities in the field. So, even with that video gaming, they will be a bit stressed, and we will ask them to do specific things. We have an entire virtual environment where they will do prison visit. A lot of people sometimes don't know, but one of the roles of the ICRC that we have the mandate from the Geneva Convention is to ensure that prisoners of war are treated with dignity and respect. And visiting a prison is also something that it's hard to prepare for. But again, if we can create those virtual environments that go a little notch more on your emotional, we hope, when we saw it and we had feedback, that actually when you face the reality, you will be a little bit better prepared. So, using the gimmick of video game that, when I play video game, I get stressed out, but using that feeling, that emotion to actually prepare you, I think it's something that it's hard to do without it, honestly.
Yeah, no, thank you, and great to listen to, Jérémie. I mean, what we see increasingly, so we talk a lot about tech here, of course, but video games are first and foremost a creative and a cultural industry. It's about creating a narrative. It's about creating a story. It has, it's really on that mix of, artists, narratives, graphic designers, and of course the coders that do the software in order to make that play interactive. But I think what we are seeing since a couple of years is what we call the spillover effect of video game technology being used in many different areas, whether that is in mining, in urban planning, etc., in fashion, and I think what we also see with when we visited the installation that you do have in Geneva on how you are using, AR, XR, video game technology. I think that was quite mind-blowing. I think we, as the video game sector representatives, when we visited the work that you're doing and discovered the innovation work that you're doing to see how you're using, AI agents in order to do the negotiation, to get into that compound in order to bring that supply in there. That really trains you in order to face that probably on-site difficult negotiations that you need to have. It does not, of course, replace that, but we imagine it probably prepares you in some way or another. We tried out this great video game in how you navigate the center, how you need to interact with people in need, etc. And then we had this really interesting, I mean, it was a colleague of mine did it. It was this experience, VR experience, where my colleague was asked to save a child in a war zone under attack. And, it gets really intense. And I think that was really interesting, I think, for us as a sector to see, how you, as the International Committee of the Red Cross, are innovating and are using these technologies. So,
Yeah, thank you for that, Jérémie and Dan. So the ICRC is really tapping on the empathy and the emotional connection that people can get from trying these video games and immersive technology in order to connect with more people and to amplify the messaging that we have. Now, Elena, you worked directly with armed groups and armed forces on the international humanitarian law. Can you tell us about how the ICRC is using VR to engage with these groups?
Yeah, exactly, Kristina. In fact, you used the word empathy, and this is exactly what my unit is trying to transmit to the armed carriers, both armed state forces and armed groups, when we are talking to them about how they are planning operations. And back in the days, all the members of my unit are former military, and me, myself, as well. And I remember those days when, being a young lieutenant, I was trying to improvise on the floor, putting the soldiers, drawing some areas, and trying to imagine how the fight that we are currently planning would work out in the reality. I was trying to predict what's going to be the consequences of the civilian population. And trust me, that was really hard. That doesn't give us the necessary level of the visuality. Now, what we see more and more often, the military are using the immersive tools or gaming in order to bring this element of presence, of predictability to their planning. And don't take us wrong, the ICRC is a humanitarian organization. We're not teaching the military how to fight their wars. What we are teaching them is how to bring this element of empathy, how to bring the element of humanity to all that they are planning. We call it humanitarian lenses. I don't want to stress you out, but just imagine, what if the war comes to you? You want to be considered by those planners who are working on the maps, on the tactical maps. You want to be considered every time a targeting is decided. That's difficult. I have done this, and I can tell you, this is difficult without putting yourself in the middle of it, even if it's a gaming. Visit our dome and experience this kind of being inside of the operational environment. And in a way, you can feel what those with the boots on the ground can feel. This is what we are trying to bring when we're using the immersive tools. We're trying to broaden the view of the military decision makers by bringing those humanitarian elements that are exclusively important when we want to minimize collateral damage, which is impossible to avoid in a conflict-affected area, but we want to minimize it in order to alleviate the suffering of the affected categories.
That's really wonderful what you said, Lena, that the ICRC is not telling the military people how to fight the wars. We're trying to highlight the consequences of their decisions through the simulations that we have. But knowing the military, sometimes they can get very traditional. How receptive are they to these types of emerging technology when you engage with them?
Or they become extremely receptive when we actually place them in the middle of the potential humanitarian consequences. And even if you will forget all that we have discussed here, please remember a word, SWIRMO, Senior Workshop on International Rules Governing Military Operations. This is our most massive event that we are running every year. And guess what? The highest military officers, decision makers from your countries are coming to this event and are learning how to bring the humanitarian lenses to the operations that they're planning. So in case if they would need to defend you from a potential military threat, they would know because we brought them into immersive humanitarian consequences. And yeah, we can see how the approach to the targeting changes. When we only give them the maps, it's one kind of thinking. It's only analyzing the enemy forces, your own forces. Once we bring them to the virtual reality, once we bring them in the middle of an urban area, it broadens the view. They start considering more and more elements. And what is interesting, they also start remembering that although being now in their military boots, with the epaulets, with the weapon in their hands, they're still the members of the society. And they need to defend this society. And then the decisions are different, and then the thinking is different. The precautionary measures become to be more and more important. And actually the creativity on how to potentially minimize the collateral damage appears more and more often. So we really see that it's something that is indeed effective. It works.
Yeah, that's really great because, Lena, with your hands-on experience, I imagine you have dealt with multiple military officials in different levels as well. And it's shown that these simulations really work when it comes to training them or incorporating as well the international humanitarian law in their decision-making processes. Now, I'd like to bring us into future or forward-looking approach for our panelists. The question is, what do you think is possible when humanitarian organizations and gaming or XR industry collaborate? So what type of partnerships can we expect when these two industries work together? And what principles should guide it to make these partnerships more meaningful?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm from the generation, you know, I was born in video game with Super Nintendo and Mario, and I remember back then when I was, you know, a teenager growing up, they're like, yeah, those video games are going to make them all like barbarian, you know, because you kill someone in the game, then you will have no feeling when you kill someone in real life. I don't believe that, you know, I play a really, really horrible game, and I still do. And, you know, I don't think it made me less of a human or less in touch with my feeling. In the contrary, I think and I have a young son that is 11 years old, and, you know, they grow faster now, so he does stuff that when I was 11, I will not. And he clearly see what's the difference between reality and the virtual world or the gaming world. So I do think that, you know, game is meant for fun, it's meant for, you know, releasing the pressure. And we have example in the past, we work, you know, with video game company. They actually approached us because they were really curious about EHL, so international humanitarian law, or law of war, if we wanted to say it simple, and they wanted to embed that into one of their downloadable content. So actually, you know, we helped them to understand some of the things, and that became the game was Arma 3. That became something that they could actually, they had to pay for, and they were kind enough to also support us financially in the money they were making around that. But that actually embedded into a war game where, you know, most of the time it's about shooting as much combatant as you can. They actually embedded the principle of what you can or cannot do when it comes to international humanitarian law and the law of war. So we had example already. And I really do wish in the future, and that's also why we are present in those type of events, is we had great people visiting our booth, you know, and, you know, some of them would like to sell us their service, and we appreciate that, but you know, we're going through dire consequence of what's going on in the world. I think you all read the news. The humanitarian is not getting more funding despite having even more war and very close to us. So there, potentially, you can do your part by embedding some of those things, and we'll be happy to work with you on how to embed that, or even if you want to help us to create new experience, definitely let's have a talk, come to our booth, and we can discuss. But you know, as much as we love technology, as much as we love VR, it required a huge investment for certain of the things. So for us, we do a lot of 360 videos, and the Dome can show you that, because those are let's say, not as complex as creating a full virtual environment with interaction, and we want to go further. So, I mean, if you'd like to bring more hope in the world, to help 162-years-old organization that have been on most of the conflict that you know in modern history, I mean, let's have a talk, come to us, we need you, and we believe we can do more. I'm a strong believer that the gimmick of video game, of VR, can bring a difference and can connect the people. I think you talk about connecting people through video game, and I think we could connect people through video game, but even go deeper in how can we make maybe the world a better place. Maybe, you know, it sounds like a pageant talk, you know, like world peace, but no, I believe in what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really good sales pitch for ICRC.
Trying my best.
No, but no, it's really, I mean, it's important, and we increasingly see these, you know, ideas for collaboration. I think we're sometimes a little bit overwhelmed, and I think, you know, we don't have the capacity to do everything. Of course, individual companies, I know that you work with some of the game engines, for instance, which is super important in order to create these, you know, virtual worlds. I think from, you know, where we can be most helpful, and we're going to discuss that within the GVDC further, I think we now have really understood what you guys are doing, and we see all that important work. But I think one thing that really struck us is how we can potentially, via our network of video game companies, look at technical support. Mm-hmm. So, you know, can there be a pool of technical support from, you know, passionate people that work in video game development, in video game narratives, in the technology part, and obviously, you know, to be able to support you on specific areas where you may need competence, etc. So I think that's an idea, to be able to have a sort of a pool of that support level. Then I think, I mean, we did not know what you guys were doing before we came and visited you. So I think the video game sector is really good at hosting, you know, major events. Gamescom in Cologne in Germany draws some 300,000 people during a week's visit. There is a big Gamescom campus, for instance, and I think also what we can, as you know, the industry association sector, also supporting, giving visibility to work that we may have with important partners. You have game weeks across the world, so I think GVDC being a global coalition, I think, you know, seeing that we can provide that visibility. There are also panel discussions, etc., at those events as well. I think that would also be good to get that message out about. We find the really innovative work that you are doing, and we also feel proud that you're using other technologies, but some also narratives and video game technology coming from the sector, and I think it's very heartening to see that from our side. So we're looking forward to further discussions with you.
Well, I would say that this world is full of synergies. We're not alone, and the humanitarians could not be working in their circle somewhere apart just simply because we would not be effective. And then we could not be fighting the developments. We cannot be fighting the future because, again, then we would not be effective. And in fact, this is for our common benefit. It's in your interest, it's in our interest to be unifying our efforts and to be able to spread the message. And the message is actually to provide necessary humanitarian assistance and the empathy that Kristina started her speech with. And for that, it is important to collaborate. We bring the message, you provide the tool. Together we think on how to better make it real, make it reach the necessary interlocutors. So I think we should be working together just simply because we're building the world together. We are part of the same world. We are having different tasks and jobs, but after all, the end state is the same. It's for our common interests. So,
No, that's really good. Thank you so much for that, Jérémie, Anne, and Lena. So it shows how humanitarian work can offer an impactful space for XR and gaming industry to do their work, and in return, we benefit from the technical expertise and support that these developers or you gamers have or can offer us to develop or enlarge in our work as well. Now, we have a request from our audience. We've been having such a rich conversation already, thanks to our great panelists. But now we want to test some assumptions. So from our audience, if you can just bring out your phones, scan the QR code we have on the screen, and tell us what you think about this statement. So, true or false? Video games were initially created as demonstrations of early computer technology for academic and military research. What do you think? And I'm gonna have the live results on my tablet here, and I'm gonna relay it to our panel speakers. So I give you 20 more seconds to tell us what you think about our statement. Do you think that these games stemmed from technology for academic and military research, or is it maybe for entertainment reasons? All right, so for our panel speakers, the poll is very live right now. So 65% of the people with us think that it's true, while 35% believe that it's false. So even in a tech-focused room, there's still a bit of misconception there. Yes, or we don't know actually. These are all public perceptions. So what do you think, Jérémie?
I mean, as a fan of sci-fi, usually when you watch sci-fi show, it's always for the military that they build new stuff, you know, like the Stargate and all of those things. So I tend to lead toward true because of my, again, sci-fi culture or non-culture around that. So I could see that, you know, because also in terms of budget and finance, we often see, and I think Lena could testify on that, that military has more budget than almost anything else. So I will not be surprised that the answer is true.
Okay, so for Jérémie, it's mostly true because defense has the budget. Yes, how about you, Anne?
Well, I think, you know, you can say yes, you can say no.
Yes.
But, you know, play has existed forever. You know, play it's been in our society forever. It's a very basic function to play. So video game is digital play, you know. If, you know, military may have, you know, done some first work in this area, but it's fundamentally play, you know. So, and I think we need to remember that it's, you know, it's digital play coming from that. And I think that's, you know, a fundamental function that we as humans, we like to play.
Okay, so it can be yes or it can be no as well for Anne and for Elena.
Well, I tend to say true, not because of the budget, and not because of being a former military, but because, first of all, I did hear a story long ago about a young IT expert observing once the tactical exercises that the military are conducting, and basically the tactical exercises is what you are seeing in the video games, and he got so inspired by this idea. But at the same time, talking to the military, he figured out that there are certain restrictions, like, okay, you can involve a battalion, but you cannot go further. And then certain elements you can only imagine, but you cannot really put them in practice. So he came up with the idea of creating a tool that would allow to train those pieces that were not possible to train in the field. And that's how the first video game was born, obviously for the military use only. So I actually tend to believe that one, or at least I like it.
Okay, so Lena has an article that she wanted to share with us. That's really good because it actually depends on how you look at it. I guess if you go on the web search and you try to fact check if it's from military or academic research, there's plenty of sources that would refer to video games, some refers to computer games or gameplay, so it really depends on that. Now we have some time for audience Q&A. If anyone would like to ask a question to our panel speakers, you can raise your hands and we can of course entertain a question or two. Do we have any questions? Yes. We have one from... Okay, we'll just preparing the microphone so we can hear your lovely voice across the room.
Thank you very much. Where would you see ICRC's 5 to 10 years roadmap into further developing those technologies on the activities and the roadmap that you want to achieve with the evolution of new technologies coming out?
I mean, based on my experience at the ICRC, I think we always try to follow the technology. I think the answer will be partially related to budget and funding, honestly. But no, I think we use the word quite a lot, empathy, humanity. You have to follow where the human go, because then if not, you become irrelevant, you know. And you know, even if the Geneva Convention were wrote much, you know, before we were all born, that doesn't mean they don't apply. But in order to make them also relevant in the current world, we need to educate people. You know, like there is around in the Geneva Convention, and Elena can speak much better than me on the topic as an expert, but you know, there is things around civilian infrastructure that was already written in the Geneva Convention. If you attack the server of an hospital, it's still a civilian infrastructure, so they apply. But we see that there is a certain limit where we need to understand what's happening in those new world, you know. The internet is, when it was created, was wild, wild west. But I think now we also try to make it a place that is a bit safe. And that means that we have to look at what harm can happen on the internet, especially in the context of civil, of armed conflict. And you see all of the misinformation, disinformation. So we do work in those areas as well. Of course, the focus here was on VR. But we did, in the last UN meeting in New York, we had a booth where a politician could walk and, you know, we were explaining stuff and say, oh, by the way, a picture will be taken of you. And when they get at the end of the booth, they have themselves talking back to them, saying misinformation, something light, you know. But nevertheless, we need sometime, again, to confront the decision maker, to confront the leader of armed group, and so on, to what technology can do for good and for bad. So we have to follow it. So I do believe that the ICRC, no matter what, will follow after. The extent and the size of it, I think, will depend on the funding on the humanitarian world. So you can always help there. Huh?
And I also tend to agree with Julian. First of all, well, we need to speak the common language, the language of today. And if I would be talking to the combatants 20 years ago, probably modern technologies would be something really not relevant. But nowadays, talking to today's soldiers, you need to be able to bring some tools, messages, and the way you actually convey the information that this modern brain will be able to perceive. So I do believe that the modern technologies is a must. Yes, we have certain limitations of the budget, because most of our budget actually goes to the help to those who are suffering currently in an armed conflict. But we just cannot forget about the modern technologies. This is the reality of our life now.
Okay, thank you for that. But if I may ask a follow-up question on that, in 5 or 10 years, if we're not strictly talking about budget or financing, can you name one technological advancement that you would have want to see ICRC to have or to possibly focus on, let's say? Let's try to be imaginative and creative. Do you want to see some, I don't know?
I would probably start, well, due to the specificity of my work, I would want the humanitarian principles to be already embedded in the games. And that would give the soft preparation of the future armed forces members. They would already have their brain fixed on the principles of humanity, and that would facilitate a lot our work. Maybe I'm idealistic, but...
No, that's a wonderful answer, Elena, because now is the time actually to make this dream come to life, because we have developers with us in this room right now, and it's a good way for us to start the conversations on how we can incorporate and inject all these principles, or even how do we know that this is the respect of the international humanitarian law or the laws of war whenever we start designing these games or writing the narratives around games, right? So that's a good one, Lena.
Can I just say something on that? Because I'm also working for a creative sector of freedom of expression, freedom to create.
Yes.
So I think that it's always important to respect that freedom to create, just as a filmmaker, just as a book writer, etc. So I think it was great to hear your story, Jérémie, about a video game company, actually, because you're creating a narrative, you're creating a story. It's storytelling, and they wanted to integrate that bit in their storytelling, and that's their freedom to do so. Mm-hmm. So, so I just want to indicate that video game, it's about technology, but it's also about freedom to create and freedom of expression.
No, that's a good one that you highlighted as well, Anne, because I think most partnerships, they become more meaningful when there's respect for each other's constraints and respect for each other's principles as well. And now you have to find a way to work through that together as you go along when you do your partnerships with both humanitarian organizations and the gaming industry in general.
And maybe to do build a devil advocate to make the conversation a bit more. And I fully agree with you, and I'm a game player as well. But after there is maybe certain extent where we still have to be a bit mindful. And give you an example. When we are in the field, when Lena is with military and I have been in the field as well, our only protection is the emblem that I'm wearing here. And Kristina has a bigger one there, and we also have the bib, with the really big cross. That's our only protection. We do not carry weapon, ever. We do not, in most of the places, have armed car. So if in your video game you're like, yeah, shoot at the Red Cross, there maybe you send a wrong signal. So maybe we should put a stop to the freedom at some point. But then I fully agree with you that there is a way to marry the two. If you want to do stuff like that, use a green cross, use a heart, use something else, but maybe don't make them, do a targeted shooting on an hospital that have the Red Cross. That may send the wrong signal to the next generation. And I think that can easily be diffused by having a conversation, And I think if we explain to the game maker why, if they can avoid having, a bomb being hidden in a briefcase that have the Red Cross, why we think it's not the best way. I think it doesn't remove the freedom because the Red Cross can be changed with a red heart or something else. But the emblem itself, so it's also the Red Crescent for our national society, it's sometimes the only thing that protects us. And you know, people in the past, not even in video game, have abused the symbol, and they still do, unfortunately. So there, let's have a conversation. But then I agree, freedom is not by restricting people, say you cannot do that, it will more maybe frustrate them and not necessarily help. So let's work together to make it meaningful. Yeah.
No, that's correct. It's not really about restricting people, but having that dialogue between the parties involved, whether that's a developer or whether that's a gamer or the ICRC humanitarian who's also pushing for the tech or arguing against it. It's also always about dialogue. Yes, we have time for one more question. If anyone else wants, can we hand it over to the...
Hi. Sometimes the Red Cross seems like a huge organization that the only way we can contribute is by donating, because that's this huge thing. The question I have here, since you mentioned developers and all that, is what are the options, essentially, besides the traditional ways of contributing for a person with XR, VR experience to volunteer, essentially, especially if they're not part of a big company that's affiliated or a studio, as individuals?
I mean, indeed, the Red Cross is a huge movement. So, I mean, you know, we can exchange information. We also have Melissa in the crowd that is the head of VR. And we can discuss, and if you can help, we'll be happy to. Sometime for the International Committee of the Red Cross, it may be, but, you know, having one person like that, it can be difficult to embed them into existing projects. But also what you may look at, and that's the beauty of the movement, is that nothing stops you from going and to talk to your national society. If you're based in Belgium, the Belgium Red Cross is very active. And, you know, they may be interested for you to create a small project, you know, in the context of an event like this, or a pop-up store. You know, it doesn't have to be massive. You know, we have some of our demo that are a couple of minutes long. You know, you just project it in a place, you see an environment. So it doesn't have to be that complex. So, you know, reach out to us and we can see where you can help us, but also look at other humanitarian organizations, your National Society, Red Cross, and other. I think there is opportunity for people that wants to make a difference, and we'll try our best. If we cannot do it with us, we can also help you to connect with your National Society. So, yeah, we'll try our best, and if you want to help, let's have a talk.
Okay, so thank you for our audience for the questions and answers. Now we're gonna gently close our panel. We'd like to thank everyone for coming and joining us in this wonderful discussion. If you want to see where this conversation is already taking shape, we are inviting you to come and visit us as we have brought the ICRC virtual reality to United XR. So we have the big red dome at the expo hall. I'm pretty sure you won't miss it. It's literally a big red ball. And from there, you can watch films and stories that we have shot in the field. So you can travel to Afghanistan or Lebanon or Colombia, just to name some. And these are stories that are human. These are impactful stories as well that we use to engage with different stakeholders. And of course, we also have other simulations. We have the AI negotiation chatbot that we have co-developed with CCHN, or the Center of Competence of Humanitarian Negotiation. We also have multiplayer simulations that we use to train our staff before they go to the field. And if you scan the QR code here above, it's gonna lead you to our website. So the ICRC virtual reality team always seeks and waits for developers and gamers and tech experts like yourselves. So we're happy to have a conversation on collaboration, or even just we will benefit greatly from your expertise. So thank you so much, and thank you so much to Anne, to Elena, and to Jérémie for sharing your expertise and knowledge as well with us and with the audience. And thanks to United XR, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.